Bobby Fischer does a very late castling as of the 21st move in this match, which is actually featured in his most memorable game. So Fischer is playing against Vasil Simsalov, and Fischer is playing with the black pieces, and Simsalov is playing with the white pieces. So this is a Sicilian on the board, the Sicilian defense, and after this pawn is captured, the knight captures back, and knight to f6 and knight to c3 is played, and a6 is pushed, making this the Sicilian defense nudged of variation, and a bishop now comes to g5 attacking this knight, and the pawn is now pushed here to e6 here. So pawn push to f4 is now played. So basically you will have to unpin, because otherwise this pawn is pushed. If you capture back, and you cannot move the knight, and you lose the knight. So the bishop goes to e7 here, unpinning the knight, and queen comes to f3 here. So with the looks of it, basically when you play Sicilian, white will have this option to go for a queenside castling and push his pawn on the uh, you know king side and launch an early attack. So that's what happening here. So queen goes to c7 here, and vassal castles on the queen side as of the ninth move. So knight b goes to d7 and pawn push to g4, launching an attack on the king side. So b5 now by Fischer, and after the this bishop captures the knight captures back, and the pawn push to g5, attack the bishop knight, and the knight retrieves to d7 to the earlier square. So bishop to h3 is now played by Vassal, but a best move would be to push the pawn over here and attack this pawn structure of the king. And because Fischer is not castle, it's a good idea to try to demolish his pawn structure in front of the king. So pawn push to b4 now attacks the knight, and the knight goes to e2, and bishop to b7 is now played by Fischer. A better move would be to push this pawn over here, which would basically give you some protection against this pawn push later on in the game. So basically king to b1 is now played, but the best move here would be to capture this pawn with the bishop like this. And if you capture it, this knight will capture the pawn, and once the queen goes away, you can grab another pawn over here, and for that particular bishop, you will get 3 pawns, and once the uh, king moves away, you can attack, and now you have your rooks doubled up, your pieces are well aligned, and Fischer's king will be exposed, and but that move didn't happen. So as of this position, king to b1 is now played, and knight goes to c5 by Fischer, and knight to g3 here, bringing more pieces into an active attack, and d5 is played now, trying to counter the pawn structure. So pawn push to f5 now, attacking the pawn structure here, keeping up the pressure. So the d pawn captures the e4 pawn, and the queen goes to g4 over here. So you cannot capture back because it's attacked twice, and if you capture it, you lose one of your major pieces. So Fischer goes ahead and captures this f5 pawn, and now the knight captures this f5 pawn. A better move would be to capture with this knight over here. Bringing in both the knights into the game would have been better, but this allows g6 to be played, and the knight captures the bishop, and the queen captures the knight back. So queen to f4 is now played, attacking this f7 square over here. As you can see, Fischer is still not castle, and it's already 21st move, and Fischer castles now, very late castling. So the idea is that once you castle in, it's very pretty, because all the pieces are already on the king's side. Once you castle, it will only help for these pieces to attack the king, and Fischer's pieces were actually on that particular queen side. So it will be very difficult for Fischer to defend. So it's best to delay castling in such situations. So rook to d6 now, and rook 8 to d8, attacking the rook, and rook goes to f6 over here. So creating more pressure on this f7 pawn over here. The best move, but here would be to capture this rook, and but he didn't do that, which allows the rook to go to d5, creating some threats for the white pieces, and also allowing you to double up the roofs later on in the game and launch a counter attack. So bishop to g4 now, allowing space for this particular pawn to be pushed out, and also freeing up and to activate the rook. So knight comes to d7. He could have also pushed the pawn here to e3, So the rook now doubles up and creates more pressure on this pawn on f7. So pawn push to e3 by Fischer, and b3 is now played. Basically, the best move here would be to put your bishop over here, attack this rook, and basically you'll have to go over here to protect this rook. Otherwise, you will have to exchange your rook for this bishop. So now rook goes to d2 over here, and the bishop captures the knight, and rook captures back, giving in ample protection to this f7 pawn and also guarding the bishop over there. So rook to e1 now attacking that pawn, and rook comes to e8 over here, trying to guard this pawn over here. But a better move would be to bring the rook over here to c8 and launch an attack on this pawn here on this c2 square on the of the king. So pawn push to h4 now, and queen goes to c5 by Fischer, and queen to c4 is now played. And here Fischer goes for a queen exchange, and the best move would be to bring your queen over here and attack this knight, but he didn't go for that. And rook comes to d4, attacking this isolated pawn. So the pawn just pushes to c5, and now because these both pawns were attacked, you get your pawn back, one more pawn. And so Fischer is now basically up by 2 pawns in the game, and the pawn push to c6 with the support of the rook happens, and this knight bishop is now forced to move, and rook to d6 is now played. But the best move would be to go over here to protect the knight, and rook now goes to c4 over here. But the best move would be to place your rook over here and attack the knight, but he went for this, and the king now comes up the board to b2, and Fischer responds by giving his king to g7, and now king goes to b3, and you are forced to make this move attacking this knight. So this king move basically created an attack, and you had to move. So basically the knight moved to e2, now blocking this further pushing of this pawn, and also blocking your rook, and rook to e6 is now played. So the best move would be to go with the bishop and create a check, and basically, but he went for the rook, and rook to d1 is now played, doubling up the rooks, and rook to g2 is played, basically attacking the knight, and the knight jumps to f4, basically attacking both the rooks. It's a fork basically, but Fischer had other idea. He just went for the capture of the rook and goes for the rook exchange. And once the rook is captured, he pushes his rook to d2. Still, a better move would be to bring your rook over here to f2, attack the knight, but rook now comes to d3, attacking this pawn. So, and because of the knight here, you cannot bring your rook over here. So the rook goes and attacks the knight here, and once now Vasily is basically forced to defend the knight, and once he does that, e2 is pushed now with the support of the rook. So knight jumps to d3, attacking the rook here, and bishop goes to f5 here. So the idea is that if you capture the rook here, you can just push the pawn over here. So because of that, you cannot capture the rook with your knight. So pawn push to c7 instead, and rook goes to f3 over here. So if you basically getting this rook away from the attack, and this allows the c8 queen, and once the pawn is queen, you can capture it back, and now the rook goes to e4, attacking this particular pawn. So bishop goes to f5, attacking this particular knight over here. So once this rook captures this pawn, the bishop captures the knight, and you have to capture with your pawn. And now Fischer got one more pawn. He's up by 3 pawns in Indian games, but he lost one more pawn. And after which the rook goes to d5, and rook to g2, defending the pawn. And once these pawns get exchanged, the king is up, and pawn push to a4 now, and g5, and rook to c2, and Fischer goes to d6, guarding this pawn, and the king comes to c5, and rook to e6 here. And these 2 pawns connected pawns can march up the board and can queen and can cause problems, and this will be defended here. The king cannot come down here because of the rook over here, and Fischer will win the match. So basically, because of that, Smyslov resigned the match as of this position, and Fischer won the match. So a little bit long game, so thanks for watching. A nice little game with a lot of combination to learn from. So thanks for watching. We'll be back with more such videos.